library entitled African Americans in the Colonies. Let me hit you with some highlights. The first Black people in Jamestown were a group of Africans from Barbados. They were brought there by Dutch traders, and Englishman John Rolfe bought them. The Blacks probably spoke English, and like English indentured servants, might have eventually earned their freedom. Antonio, a Negro, arrived in Jamestown in 1621. He was owned by the Bennett family, who praised his hard work and loyalty. Antonio married a Black woman named Mary, eventually earned his and his family's freedom. He became a landowner and changed his name to Anthony Johnson. In the early days of Jamestown, settlers didn't use words like white or black to describe themselves. They would refer themselves or each other as English, Christian, or perhaps servants who could be either white or black. Anthony Johnson enjoyed the same rights, freedom, and respect as any white servant who became successful by working hard. But as tobacco farms became bigger, the need for laborers grew, and the amount of English people willing to come to America as indentured servants was shrinking. So they turned to slavery. Slavery was not new to the people from Africa, where warring tribes often turned prisoners into slaves. In Africa, slaves lived and worked with the family who owned them. Slaves were considered unequal, but they were treated like other family members. This is similar to the experiences of early slaves in America, who worked alongside their white owners and probably slept in the same house. The first Africans in North America spent time among the Europeans. They could speak English and often converted to Christianity. They sometimes won their freedoms by claiming that as Christians they deserved it, or they bought their freedom with the money they earned in their free time. By the mid-1600s, 1 in 5 Black people in North America was free. But then the laws regarding slavery became stricter. African slaves entered Carolina the same way as the other colonies from the West Indies. They usually spoke English and they enjoyed some privileges in their life of hard work, but these privileges did not last long in Carolina. These farms gave way to plantations, and slaves were brought directly from Africa to the busy slave ports of Charlestown and the Chesapeake Bay. As the Black population of the colonies grew, white lawmakers made it harder for Africans to prosper. Once, a slave like Anthony Johnson could earn his freedom and live a good life if he worked hard. Now, the land he knew was vanishing. Now, Africans like John Punch were seen just as one way, permanent slaves, property of their owners. This chapter is called Recreating Africa in America. That's how we're describing slavery. We're just recreating Africa because, as you know, 11-year-old Odula Equino was kidnapped from their African home by Black slave traders. He was heartbroken when he was separated, and he was eventually sold to some white slave traders, where he saw white slave traders for the first time. Life was difficult for slaves who came directly from Africa because they didn't speak English. They worked long hours. They had few chances to learn other skills besides farming. White people, especially in the South, became more fearful of Africans as their numbers grew. Whites used fear and sometimes severe punishment to control Black slaves. Conditions slowly began to improve as the next generation of slaves demanded more rights. Family life was important to the Africans. The white slave owners learned that keeping families together meant fewer slaves would run away. Slaves wanted more free time. For a while, plantation slaves worked 7 days a week. Then they were given Sundays, the traditional day of rest, off from work. Slaves again began growing vegetables or raising chickens to sell and hired themselves out to non-slave owners after finishing their plantation work. By earning extra money, slave parents could improve the way their families ate and lived. If you're worried about the Black boy we read about a moment ago with the Black slave traders, don't worry. He grew tall and strong, and after a long, hard day's work, he worked even more to save money to purchase his freedom. When one of his owners abused him, he complained to the Connecticut Justice of the Peace. The man apologized, but said in his defense there were no laws to protect slaves. Finally, at age 36, he bought his freedom from his master. Slave owners often lived in fear of rebellions or uprising against them. And then they talk about one that happened where a band of 20 slaves led by a man named Jemmy left their owners and headed south, where they killed more than 20 white people that day. The cause of liberty inspired many white Americans to think harder about the morality of slavery. Many decided that human beings owning other human beings was wrong. Thousands of Africans were freed by their owners after the war ended. Even George Washington freed his slaves. At the end of the 1700s, the northern states were abolishing slavery. Some southern states made it easier for slave owners to free their slaves. It would take the long and bloody Civil War to completely abolish slavery in the United States, and that is the end. So my 5-year-old brought home a book today from her text.
Okay, so basically what I'm getting from this and the book in itself is that, and based off of the connotation of that little quote right above her head right there, and as well as her caption. In summary, not so bad. In summary, not so bad. Mostly, you could work hard and be freed. Black people did it first, and white people were okay. So, well, you could take that. You could take that and turn that. You could take that and turn that to something. By well, a lot of black people already say, well, white people always trying to take shit that black people do first. That's one thing. But that's not the point of this conversation right here. The point of this conversation is this. In her mind, because she didn't give nuance, she didn't give any context in regards to what she actually believes. She just says not that bad. What do you mean by that, Miss Karen? Or whatever your name is, Domestic Blisters, whatever that Casey Davis, that's her name. Casey Davis. What do you mean by that? Now, I will say this, because I had this conversation before with a lot of y'all black people. A lot of y'all think that black people, just because black people have a difference of opinion, all of us don't think the same in regards to how things operate in the world. As a person of color, y'all think that we all got to think the same. But here's the facts and here's the truth. Most black people understand what happened 200, 400 years ago. They understand it. They know what happened. They know that they were slaves. They know that people were in chains. They know that they were getting whipped. They understand is that, yeah, we all, even some of us know even further that there were black slaves. Black slave owners. There were black slave owners back then. We understand all of that shit, right? We understand all of that, and nobody can overlook that. However, just as much as I can acknowledge what happened back in the past, I can also acknowledge and hold our black people accountable as well, because we don't live that life we don't live that life. We aren't moving in 2025. That world that was back then, we don't live in that world anymore. We don't. We can go come and say whatever the fuck we please and move and operate how we want to. So we can't continue to put the onus on the white man or the white woman. We can't continue to do that, because we have the power, right? We have our free will to do whatever the fuck we want to do. Yep, back when they had the Jim Crow laws, discrimination, and all that shit, I understand every ounce of it. I understand it. Trust me, I understand it. But we aren't living in those times anymore. So you can't continue to keep looking back and using that as a crutch. Can't continue to keep using that as an excuse as to why you can't continue to go forward in life. I know a lot of people gonna come in. Well, what about the mental state that fucked us over for so many years? I get it. But we've seen many instances, we've seen many examples to where people have become successful that are a person of color. We've seen too many. So there's no excuse anymore. There's no, oh, I'm just a victim of my circumstances. No, you're not. You just choose to make the wrong fucking decision when you know the wrong decision, when you know the decision that you're supposed to make is just going to take you this way. One of the biggest things that I've heard before, a lot of people are afraid of success. And what that looks like. A lot of people are afraid of what the people that grew up with them will think of them. They have a guilty conscience because they were the ones that decided to make it. They were the ones who made the conscious decision, say, you know what, I don't want this life for myself or my future. So therefore, I'm going to put myself in a position around different people that's going to help me catapult myself forward so I can get myself out of this situation or out of the hood. We ain't walking around with chains on our ankles, dog. Ain't no chains on our ankles. There's no chains on the ankles at all. So we can't continue to keep pointing the finger at everybody else. Nobody's oppressing you, bro. Nobody's oppressing you at all. That's your own myth. You are more of an oppressor to yourself than anybody else is or can be. You continue to oppress yourself. So it's on you. You have to look yourself in the fucking mirror and say, look, bro, get your shit together. Stop blaming everybody else. Because we talk about what we need to do for the community, how the community's messed up. We need to start giving back. But how in the hell can you focus on the community when your shit ain't together yet? When your house ain't in order yet, how in the hell can you focus on the community? The community can't get better. If you're a part of the community, that means you need to take care of your home first and get your shit in order. And then you can then focus on the community once your shit is in order. That's how that works. And then to the white people, I get it. You're tired of people, you're tired of black people talk about it. I get it. Black fatigue is real. I understand it. But what you're not gonna do, well, first and foremost, black people, they gotta stop holding the ones that aren't accountable. They got to stop trying to hold the people who had nothing to do with it accountable for the things that happened in the past. We can't continue to keep doing that. But also, white people, you can't overlook it either. You have to understand it. You have to acknowledge it. It is what it is. And do your best to. Nobody say you got to overcorrect. We don't need overcorrection. We don't. Nobody needs overcorrection because then it ends up being. You lean too far one side, then you try to overcorrect, then you end up leaning too far on the other side. Even kill. Listen, look, I understand what happened, man. I can only imagine. I can't even imagine what people went through, or I can't even imagine what it's like to live in the skin of a black person. But I do acknowledge the fact of the things that happened, and that was egregious work. Cool. I can be cordial with you, or but I don't move like that. That's not the way that I live. That's not the way I was raised. X, Y, Z, and you just keep it pushing. But the one thing you got to do, you don't need to overcorrect. You don't need to be an apologist. You don't have to continue. You don't have to walk around eggshells around black people. Black people, they just need to get their shit together and stop being offended by every goddamn thing. Straight up. Straight up. Because there's nobody needs to be held more accountable than the black people in their community. But here's the problem though. Black people in the community, you need to be open and you need to be receptive to the black people that's holding you fucking accountable. That doesn't mean that they got everything going on for them, but they may be in a better position than you are, especially if they're holding you accountable. If they got the results and they're trying to tell you, look, bro, this is what you need to do in order to stop being like this so you can do this, then you probably need to take heed and listen to what that person is telling you instead of getting offended by it. And all of a sudden, man, who the fuck? See, man, you a coon, bro. See, like this, I can't stand y'all type of niggas. See, you part of the problem. You won't even take the time to listen because you offended already. But I mean, hey, it's only so much you can tell people, bro. It's only so much you can tell people. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and look, let me know what y'all think let me know what y'all think, bro. Let me know what y'all think about this.